Today is trade deadline day. After all the excitement surrounding the trade deadline, the Cubs forgot to play baseball yesterday. They dropped one to the Reds 7-1 and are back in Cincinnati again for a game against the Reds today. We'll see what moves might happen as we speculate on the trade deadline only a couple hours away. That and more on the Cubs baseball channel. Make sure to like and subscribe. Get in that comment section. Let us know how you're feeling about the Cubs, who will be debuting Isaac Paredes later today. Here is your invitation to our show. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Cubs baseball channel. My name is Anthony Pasquale. You can find me on Twitter at ant_Pasquale3. Today is the trade deadline day, and the Cubs still have a lot of players that are rumored to be on the move on the roster currently. So we're going to talk about that. But first, we've got to start with this update for you guys, as the Cubs baseball channel is on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. We're posting a ton of content this week with the trade deadline, so make sure to follow us on there, engage with us, get in our comment sections there, and just talk some Cubs with us on some of these different platforms. But yesterday, the Cubs played the Reds, and quite frankly, they got shellacked. It wasn't a very great game from start to finish, but the Cubs avoid a shutout with a ninth-inning home run from Michael Busch. They lose 7-1. They had just 3 hits in the ball game. They had a hit from Ian Happ in the first inning. Nico Hoerner had a hit to lead off, I think, the 6th. And then Michael Busch hit that home run in the 9th. Otherwise, it was pretty quiet offensively from the Cubs. Had a little bit cooking in the first inning with a walk and a hit, but they end up with nothing in the first and then don't score anything until the top of the 9th inning. Meanwhile, Jameson Taillon was on the mound. He struggled a little bit against the Reds, only went 4 1/3 innings pitched, allowed 6 hits and 6 earned runs, 1 walk, and struck out 4, did allow 2 long balls. So you got to ask, we speculated if that would be his last start in a Cubs uniform, but after allowing 6 runs, could he be staying put? The trade deadline happens later on today. Jameson Taillon has been circling in trade rumors. The Astros, the Yankees, the Orioles potentially might be interested. But does that start kind of hurt his trade value? And the Cubs, who have their sights set on 2025 and beyond, might be more inclined to keep a guy who they have control over through 2026 rather than trade him, as his value has diminished a little bit after that start yesterday. So it'll be something to keep an eye on without a doubt. Another big storyline from the game is that Nate Pearson made his Cubs debut. He's the pitcher that the Cubs acquired from the Blue Jays earlier this week. And both he and Craig Counsell were ejected from the ball game. Now, Pearson went a scoreless inning for his Cubs debut, and because the Cubs were down 6 runs, Craig Counsell had him go back out there for the 8th inning. He got 1 out and then allowed a long home run to Jeimer Candelario. He really stepped on it, rounded the bases, stared at it, which is what it was. It was a pitch. Pearson missed it, but he had looked pretty good thus far. Then the very next pitch, first pitch of the next at-bat, he drilled Tyler Stevenson, who is the Reds catcher, in the helmet right by the face, but he turned at the last second and got it off the helmet. And Stevenson was really angry, not because, at least I didn't think it was this way, not because he was thrown at, but because he got hit in the head. It's a sensitive area. Nobody ever wants to get hit in the head. And the umpires gathered and made a decision. They ejected Nate Pearson and warned both benches. Then came out Craig Counsell, who was obviously furious with that decision because he knew his player wasn't intentionally throwing at Tyler Stevenson. Counsell gets ejected. Pearson was tossed. It could potentially be an effort to save a Cubs player, protect a Cubs player if the Reds were to retaliate. But the fact of the matter is it didn't make a ton of sense, and Pearson's debut was spoiled by being ejected on his first day in a Cubs uniform. The Cubs fall to 13-24 now against the NL Central this year. Now, obviously, there's been some offensive players who have regressed. They haven't pitched well out of the bullpen late in games with 18 or 19 blown saves. But when you're getting dominated by your own division, it's going to be really hard to make the playoffs. And the Cubs entered this series tied with the Reds after losing game 1 yesterday. They are now officially and solely alone in last place. That could obviously change over the course of the next 2 days and the rest of the season, but they currently are in last place. Cody Bellinger was reinstated from the 10-day injured list before the game. Expect him back in the lineup today, as well as the Cubs' newly acquired all-star third baseman, Isaac Paredes. He's on his way to Cincy yesterday. He should arrive late last night or early this morning. Expect both of those guys in the lineup today for the Cubs, which should be pretty exciting. We talked about this on our show yesterday, but Isaac Paredes will be wearing number 17. He's the first Cub to wear number 17 since Kris Bryant, and I know a lot of you have no problem with that, but personally, I wish the Cubs would do something to honor Bryant and Rizzo, the two best players on the team that finally went and won it all. Bryant, of course, an MVP that season and meant so much to this team and what they were able to accomplish. Rizzo as well. Before Paredes, 17, 44, and 34 were the three numbers that had not yet been touched from the 2016 World Series championship team. And I wouldn't hate if the Cubs were to hang up number 44, if they were to hang up number 17 in honor of both Mark Grace and Kris Bryant, and do the same thing with number 34 in honor of Kerry Wood and John Lester. Obviously, that brings the bar a little bit lower compared to some of the other guys that are up on the flagpoles, but nobody else has accomplished a World Series championship like Kris Bryant, Anthony Rizzo, and John Lester have, and I don't think you could argue any three players were more important to that title. But Paredes will be wearing number 17, hopefully making his debut tonight in Cincinnati when the Cubs take on the Reds at 6:10 p.m. It'll be Justin Steele on the mound for the Cubs. He's 2-4 with a 3.08 ERA on the season, pitching really well, coming off a few not his sharpest starts to open up the second half, but I expect him to get back on track tonight, and he'll be going up against TBD. I was all ready to say he's going up against Frankie Montas, who is the scheduled starter, 4-8 on the season with a 5.01 ERA. But late last night, he was traded to the Milwaukee Brewers. So the Reds have to adjust their starting rotation for the rest of this series with Chicago. But we'll keep our eyes on a bunch of trades. We're sure a lot will break throughout this day. Jameson Taillon, Cody Bellinger, Nico Hoerner, Hector Neris, Mark Leiter Jr., Drew Smyly, Mike Tauchman, maybe even Patrick Wisdom. We'll keep our eyes on all of those players and where they might be headed. And if they do get traded, you can count on us being on here to talk about that as soon as we can. But guys, thanks so much for coming to the Cubs Baseball channel. We always appreciate you guys liking, subscribing, tuning in, getting in the comment section, and following us on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, as well as ringing the bell on YouTube. But for now, we will talk to you later today. It's trade deadline day. Go Cubs.